So in 1975, my parents were just 17 and 18 years old, and they were stuck in the middle of Saigon as the North Vietnamese military began to overrun the South Vietnamese and American defenses. Now luckily, both my families fought alongside the US and were eligible to be sponsored and came to the US as part of the initial 200,000 refugees. Now this is largely in part due to the personal efforts of President Gerald Ford going against Congress to welcome in large numbers of Vietnamese families who had helped the US during the war. And after 8 years of hard work and perseverance, I was born right here on American soil. But with little to no money, we struggled in the younger years of our family to the point where even meat for dinner was considered a luxury. But with strong parents, great business books, and a healthy love of curiosity, I began to learn on how to hack my way out of poverty. Wondering, how far can you really take real estate or land hacking? Well, enough for me to quit my six-figure career at 27 to travel and surf the world. My last steady W-2 income was more than a decade ago, and in today's video, I'm gonna share with you and show you exactly how I did it hacking land, real estate, and rentals. Let's go. Alright, so just a quick disclaimer before we dive into the meat of this video, is that this is not a get quick rich scheme, and it is definitely not hustle porn. It's also not that big of a secret. There's actually a lot of people out there doing what I'm doing to varying degrees. Probably not exactly how I'm doing, you guys will see here in a second, but you guys get the gist. So just like anything else that can generate you a lot of money, net worth, and freedom, it's gonna take a vision, ability to execute, and a whole lot of discipline. So what I'm boiling down in today's video is just that. It's about a decade's plus worth of work crammed into an 8 to 10 minute video. So take what you're gonna hear with a grain of salt, and then make sure you do your research and your due diligence. Whether I were to lease or own, and I primarily own my properties, I would always have a plan to break even on said property. Usually that means I rented out the property or parts of the property to friends, family, or other people to at least make my money back in terms of mortgage and taxes. What this essentially means is that I own the property basically for free because somebody else is paying my fixed expenses. And you keep doing this to build your net worth, and then eventually you get into producing cash flows. But always before I buy a piece of property, a home, land, or whatnot, I always have some sort of game plan to bare minimum break even. Okay, so this is the part of the video where I get really nervous sharing this information with you because it's a great lesson learned, but it can also be very dangerous if you implement this incorrectly, or it's just like, you know, when you have a hammer, the whole world looks like nails. And so I'm gonna trust you to take this with a grain of salt, and then you do your due diligence and you do your research, and you just don't jump right into it and you start copying what I'm gonna do. And that little secret is hit that like button so we can please the YouTube gods, and the algorithm will hopefully pick up this channel in this video. I'm just messing with you. What I meant to say is that real estate is one of the safe havens, I don't know if that's the right way of expressing it, but it's one of the best places to have insane tax incentives and one of the best ways for normal folks like us to really create and generate real wealth, generational wealth. And it's the quickest way to accumulate a ton of equity without really having to start up a business or running your own company. Listen, the land appreciates, the wood appreciates, the siding appreciates, the windows, doors, and the roof all appreciate. And the US government gives you a massive incentive and discount each and every month that you make a mortgage payment on an appreciating asset. It's in our favor to pull out the largest mortgage possible with the lowest monthly payment. Now, that sounded a lot worse saying that out loud than it really is. But screw it. It's how I actually made a lot of money when I was younger. On top of that, if your property is considered your primary residence, if you live there for the next 24 out of 60 months, you don't pay capital gains tax on up to $250,000 if you're single. I don't quite remember what the number is if you're married. I think it's $400,000, but definitely check with the CPA and a tax professional. Now, if you rent it out as an investment property, guess what? More tax advantages. You can depreciate the property and use that against your own personal income, meaning less taxes, higher cash flows. Now, if you didn't know these tax rules yet, you should definitely know, because this is how the rich people or people with money play. And it's not on some secret menu that only a select few Americans or people have access to. We can all access these tax laws. It's just some of us know and others don't. And in reality, the IRS actually encourages people to avoid taxes. I know that sounds really funny, but it's true. You can avoid taxes as long as you follow the tax code or tax laws. Now, what's illegal is tax evasion. Small difference in smelling, huge difference in consequences. Now, if you need a tax professional, you don't know somebody, I'll actually link my buddy down below who's actually my personal CPA who's taking on clients right now. So if you're interested or you're looking at getting into real estate or rentals, hit him up, tell him that Kai sent you. So one of my favorite authors, Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, defines wealth as how long can you survive without ever working again. What that ultimately means is two things. You can continue making tons of money for the rest of your life, or you have little to no fixed expenses. Now, on either side of this polarizing scale defines true wealth. The problem here for the vast majority of individuals and people is that as they make more money, their expenses grow too. So when they stop making money, business fails, real estate turns upside down, whatever happens, they now have a very expensive lifestyle that they have to continue paying out of their personal bank accounts. Now in my 20s, I decided to go to both ends of the spectrum, make as much money as I possibly can while dropping my monthly expenses as low as possible. Meaning that as I made more money, I reduced my monthly expenses. Now I've always been very frugal and fairly disciplined with my finances, and I started off right in my early 20s around $3,000 plus or minus a couple $100 per month. And then after about 5 or 6 years, I got that down to $2,000 a month. And in another 5 years, I finally got it under $1,000 to be $950 a month to be exact. And because I work with Kevin, my CPA, some of those monthly expenses that I still have today are actually tax write-offs. And that's really my biggest secret of my 20s is that I continually reduce my monthly expenses or my fixed expenses as I made more and more money, even after my financial wins. And before many of you guys ask, because I've gotten this in the comments section of my DMs before, it's like, how the heck do I live off $950 a month? And a lot of folks actually call BS on it or think that I'm lying. I don't really have a reason to lie about that. But really, for most Westerners, the biggest expenses that you have, monthly expenses, is going to be your housing, transportation, and debt. Think consumer and then student. I don't have any three of those. And so I worked very, very hard through my 20s and early 30s to get rid of my mortgage and rent payments. So I basically live mortgage free. I paid off all my student and consumer debt, or I carry a credit card, but I pay that off every single month. And then basically whenever I buy a vehicle, I make sure I have cash to buy it outright, which then leaves some very minor remaining expenses such as insurance, utilities, cell phone, that type of stuff, which I also hacked in minor ways to reduce those even more so. What I've learned or what was told to me is that financial success is just the compounding effect of small habits that you find that have worked for other successful people that you're trying to emulate. Most folks buy property and they cross their fingers and hope that the land value or the home value will continue to increase at the national average. It's 3% across America right now, and in some major cities it's as high as 5 to 6%. That's good and all, but you really have no control over it. And that's why I'm a huge fan of literally building and creating your own equity when you buy property. So even at a 5 to 6% annual return, which is really, really good in the grand scheme of things, it's still really slow. When you buy or you get into the right piece of property, you should be expecting to make $100,000 to $300,000 within the first couple months, not including cash flows. Now, I forget who, but I think it was a business professor of mine who said that basically when you're trying to reach freedom or make more money, is you only have two assets that you can spend to get there: money and time. And typically when you don't have money to start with, all you have is your time. And if you don't have either, it's easier to make time than to make more money. So in my case, when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of money, but I did have time and I had my labor. And that's what I used to remodel and build equity in my properties. And as you guys know, that created a tremendous amount of value and equity for me in my 20s and now in my 30s. Now, you're probably really familiar with this term by now, especially if you watch this channel. If you haven't yet, sub to the channel and then watch my previous couple videos where I talk about land hacking. And if I had learned about land hacking before, I would have definitely been able to retire in my early 20s instead of my late 20s, early 30s. But as you may know, buying single family homes one after another can actually get pretty challenging. Outside of hitting the limits of your financial capabilities, it's just a lot of due diligence, research, and a huge liability or liabilities hanging over your head when you have multiple properties. And all of that work is done for one door. And if you listen to my house hacking method, you may be 2 to 3 doors at tops. But when you land hack, you are creating 4, 5, 6, 20 plus different income streams, not just from the house hack or glamp sites or whatever you have on your property, but also what you do with the land itself, whether you're harvesting timber, you're growing bamboo, like what I'm doing here, you selling it, you're growing crops, you're allowing cattle or horses to graze. And all those revenue streams are coming off of one property and not several different homes that are all generating a decent cash flow. Now, the really nutty thing is that the price of one of these properties where you can land hack is actually can be cheaper or the same price as a single family home inside the city. That's what's so great about this. When you want to quit your job or retire early, you're either going to need one giant payday or several different income streams that can basically replace your 9-to-5 job. Land hacking can provide you with both. That's 10 plus years of work boiled down into a couple of minutes. Now, I know a couple of you guys out there, or actually probably many of you who just heard what I just said and just like, you know what, that doesn't really mean much. But then I also know that there's actually a few of you guys out there who have that entrepreneurial spirit, that curiosity, that just lit a fire underneath you. And if I had to be completely honest, if I could go back to my 18-year-old self and give this advice or show this video to him, my goodness, I would have been able to be a lot more financially successful at a much younger age. But I think that's for most of us out there. But in my world, this is what I would consider my biggest lessons learned through my 20s and 30s. Now, I'm still doing consultation sessions. If you're interested in setting up a one-on-one, I am kind of slowing it down a little bit because I got a lot of projects and I'm working on the land hacking program released later in the summer. But if you guys do want to set something up or you guys want free guides and free spreadsheets on how I find pieces of property, how I run the numbers, go to my website. You can find my personal calendar on there. You can set up a consultation session where we can go over financing, zoning, permits, buying land, building container homes, glam sites, and all that good stuff too. And then if you really want to, you guys can sign up and basically be put on the waiting list for my land hacking program. Remember to like and sub to the channel. Other than that, you guys know I love you all. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace out.